Let's go over to State College.
Ooh.
Penn State, the number 6 seed, is hosting SMU. So we are going to talk about that game. The Penn State coming off of a really impressive performance, I think, against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. We think that they had a pretty favorable schedule here because they would draw Boise State in the second round. They also get the final at-large team in an SMU team that has a lot of speed, but we saw was challenged against Clemson and the types of athlete that Penn State also has.
Yes.
I also think a home field advantage is going to be pretty significant in this because State College, Beaver Stadium, one of the best places to play in the country. It's not at night.
No.
This game is at noon.
Oh, man. No, I'm there with you. I'll start off with this aspect of it. This is James Franklin time, right? Like this is what it is. They had the opportunity to go play in the Big Ten championship, not of their own doing necessarily, and they played a really competitive game, but that was another loss for James Franklin against a really good football team. And you see people were a little torn because of this one. Guys were ready to play, no doubt, just didn't get it done. But there are people who are like, can James Franklin actually get it done? Well, you might not have to play as many great teams as anybody else. The opportunity is on a silver platter for them, right? SMU, and I'll get into the X's and O's because I do think SMU can be tricky in this one. They should beat SMU. They should beat Boise State.
Yep.
And now at that point, it's like, James Franklin, you got to go. This was the setup for Penn State. We talked about the 12-team playoff. We talked about Penn State and how much they needed something like this. Now it's time to show up.
Well, exactly. That's where I think this starts, right? They were the poster child for the 12-team college football playoff. They were the ones that would have been in it the most over the last 10 years if this was the bracket and the way that it worked. Ton of pressure to get here, and then a ton of pressure to host a game in the first round as well. They get both of those things, despite, by the way, one top 25 win over Illinois. But they have great losses, and they played the great teams that they lost to pretty well.
They have great losses.
The committee clearly values that, right? They think that Oregon's really good. They think Ohio State's still pretty good. So they learned a lot about how Penn State played those two teams. So they get the benefit of the doubt. They get to host a game. And I think I'm with you, too, that they should be able to win it. This is a team that is incredibly talented. Drew Aller got to be as confident as he's been all season.
Yeah, I mean,
coming off what we saw in Indianapolis.
He was spinning it really well. I mean, just as a team, I think Penn State should take – I don't like moral victories. They should take a lot of confidence from that. But Drew Aller, like he had some plays where he was off of his spot, had to keep the play alive, delivered a very accurate pass. He used his legs when he needed to as well, which for Oregon, like, better game plan in terms of your rush lanes. But, like, Drew Aller having the presence of mind in those scenarios to say, I'm going to give up on the throw and I'm actually going to make a play with my legs. Like, he looks like a much better quarterback than he did last year and at the start of this season.
But here's a question. We also saw Oregon's skill players, like, running free.
By everybody.
Yeah, running by everyone. They were also really open.
Yeah, they were.
SMU, one of my favorite things about Rhett Lashley, because I also really like how he built his program.
I do too.
He says speed is the most important thing. They're going to get guys that have it. And that's one thing that I think could be a problem with Penn State secondary based on what we just saw Oregon do to them. So that's got to be an advantage for SMU as you're looking X's and O's wise.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it all year long. Penn State fans hated me at times for saying it. Their secondary is not particularly fast. I don't look at them and say, wow, there's elite speed in that secondary. I think they have good players. I think they play with great angles, great leverage. They can make tackles in space. They are not a particularly fast secondary. We saw what Tez did. We saw what some of those other guys for Oregon did to them. And I think SMU, maybe not the elite level of Oregon's skill. They got guys who can run, though. And I do think if Penn State's defensive line does not consistently get pressure, there will be opportunities in that secondary for SMU to kind of pick them apart there. Now, that is a big if. SMU is going to struggle to block those guys up front. Penn State has done a phenomenal job of bringing in game changers on that defensive line. Edges, interior, does not matter, and I like the blitz packages too. But if they're not getting home, I think SMU is going to move the ball a little bit.
That's how the front end helps the back end of the defense. That's how that one works. That one's going to be a really fun one in one of the best atmospheres in all of college football.